You finally get the break you begged for, and your body chooses that exact moment to fall apart. The deadline passes. The trip begins. The busy season ends. The tension lifts from your calendar, and you think, good. Now I can breathe. Now I can recover. Now my body will stop acting like it's being chased. But instead of relief, you get the crash. You wake up with a sore throat. Your stomach turns on you. Your head feels full of cotton. Your limbs feel heavy, like gravity got stronger overnight. Your mood drops for no reason you can name. You sit down to rest and somehow feel worse than you did when you were running on adrenaline. It's so backwards it almost feels personal. And because you can't explain it, you start blaming yourself in quiet, humiliating ways. Maybe I'm weak. Maybe my immune system is trash. Maybe I'm just anxious. Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm doing self-care wrong. Maybe I don't know how to be normal. But here's the question that changes the meaning of the crash before you turn it into shame. What if your body doesn't collapse because rest is bad for you? What if your body collapses because you've been living in one phase for too long? And the moment you finally stop, your system reveals the bill you've been postponing. Because there's a kind of exhaustion that stays hidden while you're in motion. And the second you slow down, it becomes visible. If you've lived this, you know the pattern is cruelly consistent. You push through with competence. You handle things. You show up. You keep your promises. You hold it together in public and fall apart only in private. You say, I'm fine, and you mean it enough to keep going. You become the person who can function under pressure, which sounds like a compliment until you realize functioning has become your only setting. Then the moment you try to rest, your body acts like it doesn't recognize the command. You can't sleep deeply, even though you're exhausted. You feel jittery in stillness, like you're missing something you should be doing. You keep reaching for your phone, for noise, for tasks, for anything that makes the quiet less loud. And if you do fall asleep, you wake up feeling like you ran all night. Or you get the stress hangover, that strange delayed reaction where the body was calm enough to get through the storm and then collapses when the storm passes. Your symptoms show up late, like your body waited until you were safe to finally tell the truth. That delayed timing is what messes with your head. It makes you think rest caused the crash, when the crash was already inside you. Rest just turned the lights on. And it doesn't only show up as sickness. It shows up as emotional flatness, as sudden irritability, as wanting to be alone, as crying at something small, as feeling numb when you thought you'd feel grateful, as snapping at someone you love because your system has no margin left. Then guilt arrives. Because guilt always arrives when your capacity changes. You tell yourself you should be happy you have time off. You tell yourself you're wasting the break. You tell yourself you're ungrateful. You start trying to optimize recovery, like it's another task you can win. But your body isn't looking for a hack. Your body is looking for rhythm. And right now, your rhythm is out of phase. Here's what most people never learn until their body forces them to learn it. Recovery doesn't begin when you stop working. Recovery begins when your system believes it's allowed to stop bracing. And if you've been living in constant output, constant vigilance, constant handle it, your nervous system may not know how to transition cleanly into repair. It doesn't trust the quiet yet. It doesn't trust the break. It doesn't trust the softness. It keeps running background scans like it's protecting you from something that could return at any moment. So you rest physically, while your system stays on duty internally. That's why the crash hits when you stop. Because your body finally has enough safety to release what it was holding in order to keep you functional. This is where the interpretation shifts from something is wrong with me to I'm in a cycle. And numerology, used the way Prophecy Pulse uses it, becomes a clean language for that cycle. Not a personality label, not a superstition, a timing lens, a way of naming phases, expansion and consolidation, output and integration, push and repair. In numerology's cycle logic, there are phases where you initiate and build, phases where you expand outward, and phases where life pulls you inward to consolidate what you've been spending. That inward phase is where the system recalibrates. It's where value is refined. It's where you stop living off adrenaline and start rebuilding actual capacity. But most people resist the consolidation phase with everything they have, because consolidation feels like losing momentum. It feels like weakness. It feels like falling behind. It feels like death to the identity that survived by staying productive. So they keep living in an expansion posture, even when the body is begging for consolidation. And when you do that long enough, your body doesn't just ask politely anymore. It enforces the phase. That enforcement looks like the crash after the deadline, the sickness on vacation, the sudden fatigue the moment the pressure lifts. Not because the break harmed you, but because the break finally gave your system permission to stop pretending. This is why the crash doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been strong in a way that isn't sustainable, and your body is done paying for your strength with your future. Numerology's roots matter here, because they ground the lens in something older than internet mysticism. In ancient Greek and Pythagorean traditions, and in older Egyptian and Mediterranean streams, numbers were treated as patterns of harmony and proportion, a way of describing how life unfolds in rhythms rather than straight lines. It wasn't about labeling you. It was about reading movement. When things ripen, when they consolidate, when they mature. That's why this lens fits health so well. Health isn't a straight line. It's timing. It's seasons. It's cycles of output and repair. Your body can run on adrenaline for longer than it should. That's one of its survival gifts. But adrenaline is not nourishment. It's borrowed energy. And borrowed energy always comes due. The crash is often the moment the bill gets paid. You can see this pattern everywhere in real life once you stop calling it random. You see it in people who get sick the first day of vacation. They don't get sick because airports are cursed. They get sick because their immune system finally exits high alert. During stress, the body can suppress signals, prioritize survival, and delay the full expression of depletion. The moment safety arrives, the body stops suppressing. The vacation flu is often consolidation enforced by biology. You see it in students after finals. They power through weeks of late nights, caffeine, and constant pressure. Then the test ends, and they crash into fatigue, headaches, stomach issues, or sudden sadness. They call it burnout, like it's an abstract concept. But it's the body shifting from output phase into repair phase with no gentle transition. You see it in high performers after a big launch or project. They hit the goal and feel empty. Not because they're ungrateful, but because their nervous system was held taut for months. When the tension releases, the emotional body releases too. Sometimes that release looks like tears. Sometimes it looks like numbness. Sometimes it looks like sleeping 12 hours and still feeling like you didn't sleep. You see it in athletics and overtraining. When an athlete trains hard without enough deload, the body starts sending signals. Poor sleep, irritability, recurring injuries, decreased performance. If they ignore it, the body forces consolidation through illness or injury. The phase was coming either way. The only question was whether it would be gentle or catastrophic. You see it culturally in the way modern life tries to delete consolidation entirely. Endless notifications, endless urgency, endless performance. We live in a world that treats rest like a reward for collapse, not a requirement for function. So people don't consolidate until they're forced, and then they call the force a failure. Numerology names the deeper pattern without shaming you. You are not a machine. You are a living system. Living systems expand, and then they consolidate. If you refuse consolidation, the body will create it for you. That's not punishment. That's preservation. So what do you do with this without turning recovery into another performance? You start treating the crash like a message about timing, not a verdict about your worth. The first adjustment is learning to build a bridge between output and rest instead of slamming from full speed into stillness. Your nervous system doesn't always trust sudden quiet. It can interpret it as vulnerability. A bridge can be simple. A slower walk after work, dimmer light in the evening, a meal without screens, a gentle unwind ritual that tells your body, we're not bracing anymore. Not perfection, consistency. The second adjustment is to stop scheduling your life like consolidation is optional. If the only rest you allow is the kind you earn through exhaustion, you'll keep crashing in the exact moments you want to feel free. Consolidation isn't what you do after life happens. It's what makes life possible. That means protecting small pockets of recovery before you're desperate. Short pauses, white space, earlier nights. A rhythm that leaves margin. The third adjustment is to stop confusing numbing with repair. Many people rest by scrolling, snacking, or staying half alert to the world. Sometimes that's understandable, because your system is trying to downshift the only way it knows. But repair tends to require actual safety cues. Warmth, hydration, steady meals, sunlight, gentle movement, quieter inputs, less late-night stimulation. If you keep feeding your nervous system signal, it won't consolidate. It will stay mobilized and call it rest. The fourth adjustment is learning to respect early whispers. The consolidation phase doesn't usually arrive as a dramatic collapse at first. It arrives as small signals: irritability, fog, cravings, clumsiness, shallow sleep, social fatigue, less patience. If you honor those whispers, the crash often doesn't need to scream. But if you keep overriding them, the body will eventually enforce the phase with something that stops you. And the fifth adjustment is to redefine strength in your body. If your identity is built on, "I can handle it," your nervous system will resist consolidation because consolidation feels like weakness. But real strength is not endless output. Real strength is the ability to downshift intentionally, to recover without shame, to stop borrowing from tomorrow, to look competent today. These adjustments aren't dramatic. They won't impress anyone who worships hustle. But they will rebuild the one thing you actually need for health: capacity. Because the goal isn't to never crash again. The goal is to live in rhythm, so the crash is no longer the only way your body gets permission to repair. When this begins to change, you feel it as an internal climate shift before you see it as a perfect routine. Before, your life was a cycle of pushing and collapsing. You'd run on adrenaline, then crash hard. You'd call the crash rest, then feel guilty for needing it. You'd stand back up and sprint again because you didn't know another way. Your body felt unpredictable, and that unpredictability made you anxious, which made you push more, which made the crash worse. After, you start living with a different relationship to timing. You begin catching the phase earlier. You build bridges instead of cliffs. You notice your system downshifting without panic. You feel more calm because rest stops feeling like danger. You feel more trust because your body stops needing to betray you to get your attention. You feel more clarity because your mind isn't running on borrowed energy. You feel more self-respect because you stop treating recovery as a weakness you must apologize for. Transformation is internal first. It's the moment your body realizes it doesn't have to scream to be heard, because you finally respond to the whispers. That's when rest stops being a crash site and becomes a true consolidation phase. Not a punishment, a return. When you crash after you finally slow down, what's the most honest pattern you see? Do you live in constant output? Skip small pauses? Numb instead of repair? Or ignore early fatigue? Where could you practice one small consolidation ritual this week that teaches your body it doesn't have to collapse to be allowed rest? Your body doesn't fall apart when you rest. It tells the truth when you stop performing, because the phase you keep postponing will eventually arrive anyway. And it would rather arrive as repair than as ruin. If this episode named your experience, share in the comments when your crash usually hits. After deadlines, on weekends, on vacation, or right after a big win. And what consolidation would look like in real life for you. Subscribe for more Prophecy Pulse episodes that translate symptoms into pattern, so your health can rebuild through rhythm instead of collapse.